But can I say, like, maybe a controversial thing? 99% of everything is complete shit. Like, you are talking about this from the perspective of someone who is like 0.01% or less, 0.001% earns a money from being a writer. The average person in the world is not.
No,
like,
but they still have to think, though, right?
Skills.
No, but
they still have to
I get what you're saying.
I'm saying, yeah, I understand that. I'm saying.
How else do they think, though? What other situation will that person do? Take a 10th percentile person. In what situation are they thinking? That's what I'm trying to say. Where are they being forced to think is all I'm trying to say.
Writing the prompt now. I'm just saying it's a different.
Okay.
You're just directing it in a different spot is what I'm trying to say. Like, the degree to which you get leverage from this thing is all about how well you instruct it. And it's not about endurance, where maybe you were just like literally saying, hey, you have to get to the end of page 10 and that shows that you're a really good thinker. No, that almost shows the opposite, right? That you're like regurgitating some like very average piece of slop up to page 10.
All right, welcome to another episode. No Investment Advice. You got Trung Phan, Jack Butcher, Bilal Zaidi. We already got a meme in a week here.
Yeah, let's kick it off. But Bilal, why don't you tell the listeners what you've been up to and what we got on topic today. So go ahead.
Yeah, right. What do you want to do midweek? Because it's on the script.
Go
people
ahead.
saw the meme in the week, nice and early. But anyway, yeah, I was away a couple of weeks. We did the pre-recording, Trung and I, and you guys held it down last week. Phenomenal episode. I'm halfway through, to be fair. I didn't get to finish it. You guys did a great job. I like that you snuck in the once a week Google employee thing. Somehow Trung managed to sneak that in. I was cracking up. Well, it's interesting. We were talking about it just before recording. I had enough distance from the pod to kind of listen as a normal listener. It was quite interesting. So that was quite fun hearing you two boys chatting lots of stuff about Buffett. Yeah, I was in London. Paris was a great trip, boys. Went to the Arsenal Champions League semi-final. Both. I went to Paris as well. Didn't get a ticket for the second one. But crazy experience, man. Just really, really fun being there for that. And yeah, lots of stuff with family, man. Just good stuff.
Can you tell us about the experience of going to these I've still never been to a European.
Man, it was, to be honest, even for me, it was the first time in pretty much 20 years. It was 16 to 20 years, depending on how you measure it, that we've been this good. And first time in 16 years that we haven't been in semi-final of Champions League. And for people who don't really follow it, it's kind of like the tournament. It's like the World Cup, but for club football. So if you're one step away from being in the final where like 1 billion people watch it, probably about 500 million people watch this one, I'm pretty sure. It's really cool. This year, the 4 teams that are left is one from Italy, Inter Milan, one from Spain, Barcelona, Arsenal from London, and then Paris. So it was like all-star, 4 amazing cities coming together. And yeah, the other leg, you know, I know it's in a football podcast, but the other game was insane. Maybe the best 2-legged game I've ever seen in any sport, basically.
Explain to non-Europeans what 2-legged game
Yeah,
is.
so it's like you play home and away, so home and away. So whoever basically wins out of those 2 games aggregate. That game, Barcelona-Inter, Jack, did you see this game? It was 7-6. It was an insane game.
No, I didn't watch it. Insane.
Oh my God, yeah. So that was really fun. Got to see them with my dad and my brother at home.
That's amazing, dude.
But yeah, the Paris game was crazy. And honestly, getting tickets is incredibly difficult. So you know, just had to go for it. I was only there, like, just happened to be the timing was right. So I just went for it. Sunny day in London, went early, got a kebab on the road, you know, walking with my little kebab wrap. I went on my own because it was quite hard to get tickets.
Let me ask you this about the kebab wrap. So sometimes the key here is the actual wrapping, right? Because you don't want to be walking with the juices everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, I know you're experienced pro with this, Trung.
But this is what I'm saying, though. You want that person. You know that they're good when they do the twist at the end. That's the juice catcher. For the people listening, that's the juice catcher. You're twisting the wrap at the end.
Okay.
Dude, have you guys ever been to Falafel Alley in Paris?
No.
They give you the falafel that's so big you have to eat it with a fork. You ever have one of those where there's so much action going inside the wrap that they have to give you a fork? Anyways, all right. What are we talking about today?
I know you've done a little shawarma tour of Europe when I saw you, Trung.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah, dude.
Trung was strictly in shawarma there.
But anyway, I'll tell you. Hold on. I'll tell you the best shawarma. Sorry, the best shawarma I ever had was actually in Munich, because you know the Turkish cats.
Oh yeah, the Turkish people
all
don't
up
play.
in Germany. So let me ask you guys. Actually, where's the best shawarma.
Probably for me, Berlin as well. Like,
okay.
Yeah, they do phenomenal. And I'll be honest, London has really good one because there's a lot of Turkish people as well. So you get great. And the key is the chili sauce is key.
Yes.
What about you, Jack? Cardiff?
Jack.
London would be probably better. I mean, there's some good ones in Cardiff.
Abracababra, is that one?
Yeah, McDonald's.
McDonald's. I think this is a real place. I remember you saying this before.
That was my local back at university, yeah.
McDonald's is a phenomenal name. There's so many. Trunk's got Down Air, right?
No, I got Down Air. I got Down Air, dude. Well, I'll be honest. Down Air, dude, good name. It's not, I mean, you're not even comparing. It's like comparing Olive Garden to a 3 Michelin restaurant in Rome, right? It's just like, I eat it because it's fast and it fills me up. Anyways,
Bilal, the last thing I'll say, after the game, I had been out for a while by this point, so I needed another meal. And late night, the best move is have you guys had lahmacun, which is the Turkish, it's kind of like wrapped up. It's like a little flatbread pizza thing. That they can also put doner kebab in there too, also phenomenal. But anyway, so very good trip, boys. Good to be back though, and let's get on with the show. So we're going to be talking about a lot of AI stuff. Obviously, that's key nowadays. I think every week we pretty much got AI topics to go. So Trung had flagged this write-up recently about kids cheating with AI. So we're going to talk about that, but more the wider idea of, basically.
You read the headline. Yeah, everyone is cheating their way through college. ChatGPT has unraveled the entire academic project. This is from New York Mag writer James Walsh. Dude, this was one of the most viral articles I've read in 2025. But Bilal, you wanted to say something about virality. What is it about this topic that made you think about the meta topic of virality?
Well, yeah, we want to talk about this meta category of viral topics. Like the one that was going wild again last week or in the last few days was the buy versus rent one, which I know you're about to bring up meme of the week. Every 3 months on the Twitter feed, there's like the repeated buy versus rent. There's like 2 or 3 things, isn't it? Like VCs asking for personal CRM, like that one was for many, many years. So let's talk a little bit about that as well. And I want to get your take as parents, how you kind of think about it with your kids, because it's actually something I noticed a lot with my nephew when I was back home as well, how he's using devices. I was just so much more aware of it because obviously I don't have kids at the moment. So yeah, I want to get your take on that. And then we're going to talk about OpenAI restructuring. There's a new hire there. And you think they're restructuring to go public, so we're going to break that down.
I mean, it's such a massive hire. Just to tease for the listener, she used the Fiji Simo, who they just hired as CEO of applications, used to run Facebook's main app, the blue news feed. So think about that.
That's
right?
it.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah, and then we'll see how much more we get to, but we also want to talk about Grand Theft Auto.
Yes.
The highly anticipated game. Did you guys play this as a kid? I'm assuming, right?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Oh, incredible game, yeah. And obviously, talking of memes, that's a meme. That's one that's been going for a while. Like we got X before Grand Theft Auto.
There's another meta meme. Let's cap it at that. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about how, because there's a new book that came out. It's called Apple in China: How the Capture of the World's Greatest Company. Another incredible title. That's by Patrick McGee, a Financial Times journalist. Let's do that next week because that is a juicy topic. And we
that could be its own
Apple last
episode.
Week,
so why don't we do the meme of the week, Tron? Because it kicks off this idea of meta category.
Friend of the podcast, of the Not Investment Advice podcast, Morgan Housel. For the listeners, Morgan wrote arguably the best-selling book, I think, in the past decade, The Psychology of Money.
So
just
good.
Hold on a second here. You guys have all read it. Incredible book. Butcher.
Yeah, great.
Give us your reaction.
Phenomenal book.
Really good book. Just love how it was designed and written, and good template for anybody trying to write an information dense.
Well, what is the template? What are you trying to say? What is?
He does I don't even remember. It just stuck with me. It stuck with me. 10 chapters?
Yeah.
And
very tight.
And they're really, really concisely written. And I think anecdotal references at the start of the chapter, and then a lot very pragmatically unpacked throughout the rest. But one of the few examples of a book you can read in an afternoon and feel like it would take another 20 books to convey that amount of information. He's a really great writer.
Let me
What was his next book called? The Nothing Ever Changes?
Same as ever.
Yeah, that was good too.
So actually, let me ask you, Butcher, give us one thing take away from that book. I'll ask you the same, Bilal, and then I'll give you mine.
Wealth is what you don't see.
Whew.
Banger.
Think about it. Okay,
pull
Bilal.
that back. No, I'm gonna have to think about it, but go on.
Okay. So I gotta do one? Okay,
Yeah,
I'll do one. Okay. The thing he said that really struck me was only make investments where you can sleep at night. Like if you make some investment and you're thinking about whether or not it's a dog shit investment, you should not have made that investment. I love that one. Bilal, do you have a favorite?
No, honestly, I'm so blank right now. I've read it. I've actually read it twice as well. It was embarrassing that I don't remember it. But I just loaded it on my dad's Kindle. I was at home because I was like, I think you'd like this as well. I'd have to look at my little
So how about this, Bilal? You read the tweet here. Why don't you read it?
Renting is throwing your money away is the kind of thing said by a guy who has never had to replace a roof on a house he owns. Very, very good. Very, very good.
Since Jack is the only one here that owns a home between the three of us, how hard does that hit, Jack?
We actually had a problem with the roof, but thankfully we're warranted, mate. So
okay.
If you weren't, it would be painful. It is, yeah. It's an emotional decision, not a financially responsible decision. I would say home ownership, and the maybe that has flipped in. Maybe that is a truth that has become more apparent in recent years. Like maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe it wasn't fiscally responsible to rent 20, 30 years ago, but it feels like now it is. I don't know. The decision that we made to buy a house was not about, there was no calculation being made on whether or not owning or renting would be more financially responsible. It was way more about is there a house for sale in a place you want to live? And I think when young family, optimizing for young family, even the proximity to other people who own property is a completely different environment, right? A neighbor, the first place we lived in Nashville was actually the first street was a huge Airbnb street. And that's obviously a very different experience than living somewhere where all your neighbors have owned their houses for 10, 15 years. I think that is the thing, outside of balancing the spreadsheet, that's the thing you optimize for. And you probably pay a premium for the privilege of living alongside people who are making silly financial decisions just like you.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I want to jump on something you said, though. You said the rent-buy equation. I think it definitely has changed a lot because 20, 30 years ago, in certain cities specifically, I mean, in Vancouver's one case where you could literally throw a dart on a dartboard, right? Purchase a house and it would 5 to 10x in the next 2 to 3 decades, right? I think that tailwind is largely gone. That would be why I think a lot, not necessarily, I'm not saying specifically, I think globally that tailwind, particularly in coastal cities, the 5 to 10x in 3 decades, I do not think that's going to happen again. I'm just looking at where my parents live. I'm looking at that. I'm like, is this thing going to 10x in the next 30 years? I'm like, that is because it's already done 10x. Yeah, you do the math. You 10x on top of 10x or whatever, right?
We don't take this off topic, but has it done a 10x?
Yeah. In what terms?
In what currency?
In
what are you
currency?
denominating?
Yeah.
Has it 10x in gold? In the price of gold?
I think that is the myth that keeps it going, right? I think that's probably in the psychology of money. For most people, 90% of their wealth is in their primary residence or some other massive proportion of their wealth is stored in their home. And that idea has been broadcast to younger people as a function of their parents doing it or their grandparents doing it. And then there clearly have been better stores of value than real estate in the last 10 years. Nvidia, for example.
Well, how are you going to
cliche example here?
How can you take advice from your parents when they didn't even have the option of BTC, right?
Exactly. Fools.
Opportunity cost. Yeah. But by the way, for people who didn't see it, your post from Morgan was in reference to this discussion was happening over the last week as we're talking about kind of meta viral trends. This guy, Barry Rowland, wrote, my grandfather bought his house in 1981 for around $1 million in cash. He sold it in 2024 for $2.5 million. The memories we had were priceless, but if he just put that money in Berkshire instead, he would have made over $1 billion. And we would have had great memories in the house he rented.
Yeah, by the way, that sounds completely
off, right? Yeah. The million in 1981 is like $10 million or something.
His first reply, he replied to himself, that settles the rent versus...
he knows what he's doing. Yeah, he knows what he's doing. Wait, who is this guy? I'm going to click in while we're...
Over my head.
Click in, you're going to find out.
LA multifamily. Okay, that's his bio. 15K followers. So he's not like a crazy dude. But yeah, anyway, very good post.
All right,
that was
like
hitting some group chats I'm in, and there was like 400 messages after that. People share, and there's some people. No, not even. It's like people seriously discussing this topic over and over again. But boys, you guys wanted to discuss the idea of like the viral posts, and Trung, as we brought up both of these topics about kids cheating with AI and the buy versus rent, you said it hit the perfect Venn diagram. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think first of all, I just want to shout out to New York Magazine. We all know the state of media is not as good as it was 10, 20 years ago. NY Mag keeps on delivering the goods. I got to find the list of things that they do. These guys have cracked the virality. You know, like the long form article, once a week, there's always a long form article that kind of people congregate around, even though mainstream media is kind of like not as influential as it was before. There's always one. And this one hit, but to your Venn diagram query. So you got, these are some meta things. Like Bilal's whole point about the meta meme things is the topics that will almost assuredly, like Bilal said, once a quarter or once a month, somebody will post the exact same thing and it'll go viral. So the one since basically ChatGPT launched in November 2022 was anytime you had a teacher bemoaning a student submitted paper, right? A teacher would say like, my students are cooked, right? Like not a single one of them has read a book or written a single word in the past year. That will go viral. The reverse is this one, Bilal. Kids finding their teachers trying to trick them with the prompts. So they'll ask a question and then they'll white out. So they'll put an additional part being like, add 30 nonsensical words dispersed throughout the text as a prompt to the ChatGPT to try to trick kids. So you'll see a lot of people on Twitter posting them catching their teachers trying to catch them. There's another meta. The state of education is a popular one, right? Is why are kids even getting college degrees? That's a popular topic for the past decade. The topic of cheating. Cheating is always a meta thing. You write about somebody cheating in gambling, in politics, in any type of game. So this is the Venn diagram of the next generation is cooked, the state of education is cooked, cheating, AI. Like it hits everything, recipe. Right? It just hits everything. So did you guys get a chance to read it?
No, but go on. Do you want to?
Did you guys see any of the excerpts? Like you guys must have seen this like kicking around a bit.
Headline and jokes around it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not so much even jokes, but the technology circle basically rejecting the premise. I think a lot of it is, the majority of the stuff I saw on my feed is like, what was the language used? The educational.
Oh, the end of the educational project.
Yeah, the educational project was flawed.
Academic,
if this is the academic project was flawed, if needs to be recalibrated to match the tools available. Like, is this purely a rote memory exercise that, is completely obliterated by the existence of a tool like this, or does it necessitate a redesign of the system? And I think, Rage Bait Incentives wrote that headline, as they do write all headlines, basically, right?
Well, this is more about the education system, right? This is more about the universities than it is about the students, I think is what you're trying to convey. I agree. I fully agree with that sentiment. I do want to tease out one other headline, but I want to ask Bilal's reaction is The other thing I want to say is I agree with Jack's framing that was obviously the pro tech framing. But the other thing I do want to say is I think the next generation is kind of cooked on terms of like, because writing is thinking, right? No, I mean, like, honestly, writing is
You're
thinking.
just talking your book, my friend.
No, but okay, well, let's hammer this out.
It's very hard to get a man to understand something that his salary depends on him.
No, but Jack, but I want to ask you though. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so this is the challenge. This is the challenge with the academic system, right? Jack's he's getting ready.
I'm limbering up.
Okay, you're limbering. Okay, so let me boil
Jack was literally limbering up. Yeah. I could see him physically.
Actually, you know what? Let me lay out my argument. Jack's gonna rebut, and then Bilal's gonna come off the top rope.
Yeah.
So this is the Paul Graham argument, right? He wrote an article that also went viral: rights versus right not. Very, very. It always has the best titles. So RITE versus RITNOT, like right as in writing. His whole argument is that writing is effectively thinking. And I'm not saying this is for everyone. Everyone thinks it. Some people are visual thinkers. Some people are auditory thinkers. I feel strongly that nothing makes you think harder than writing. And I'm happy to hear you push back on that. Because if you sit down, you're actually wrestling with the idea, right? I don't see that same mechanism, and literally a forcing function necessarily with audio or with visual over as a majority of the population. And what I'm saying is this. Like in college, I basically just copied Wikipedia articles. So I'm not saying like I'm some paragon of education, right? And academia was hacked 20, 30 years ago too. You're literally just copying it. This is what you do. You get an assignment, you go to Wikipedia, you'd find out the references in Wikipedia, you go pull those books out, and then get the exact pages from, and then that would be your bibliography, right? Having said that, you still have to write. You're still going through the process of sitting down and writing. What I'm saying is this, Jack, and I want you to rebut me if I'm incorrect. What else is that forcing function to force you to actually think, sit down and think? Right? What is it?
It's writing a prompt.
That's not enough though, because this is my problem. Is like
but I'm saying the floor will increase so massively on the output, right? Like
I don't care about the output. I'm talking about the actual individual, the actual thinking.
Well, I'm saying that the differentiation becomes how well you can instruct the machine, right?
Okay.
Like the genie's not going back in the bottle or the horse is not going back in the barn or whatever. So, but right now the gap feels so massive of like you're judging, and this is maybe what I would do as an immediate response to this in the college environment or an education environment was like, submit your prompt, not your essay. I'm gonna grade your prompt, not your essay.
This is
an interesting idea.
Actually, Jack, you actually know what you nailed for me. You actually nailed something very specific. You're right. So writing and prompting actually is the writing, right? The skill you're developing for thinking is learning how to volley with the AI itself. Okay, dude, you got me. Okay.
Yeah, no, and I'm saying like in the medium term, there is like, it's, I guess what I'm trying to align myself with or respond to is like, we can get upset about it, or like say I spent 20,000 hours fucking typing word by word these articles together and communicating my ideas, but the set of tools that exist now, I think you can even obfuscate the fact that the model was used, right? And I think if I'm looking at it in the most positive light, if I was an English teacher, I would be like, okay, I know all you guys are using this stuff, right? Let's not pretend, let's not obfuscate it, let's not like basically fraudulently try and game the system to create this output. Let's acknowledge the fact that we're all using these tools and talk about how your command of the English language gives you the ability to conjure an output that is better than someone else's. Like if I wrote a prompt that said, hey, give me a summary of World War II.
No mistakes.
Make no mistakes, right? 95% of the class is going to hand in that essay.
Yeah.
Versus somebody that has a different frame for it or a level of knowledge that they went out of their way to get to then prompt the machine with. It feels like brutal to punish the person who abstains from the technology, right? And maybe writes something more human in the short term. versus just being transparent about the fact you're using this technology in the same way that I think and I don't know I've been out of the education environment for such a long time, but the equivalent of like the calculator versus the raw processing power in your head.
Yeah.
I think people get way more defensive about words and art and quote unquote creative practices that feel like there's this huge betrayal going on when you use a machine. And I think people who love mathematics or science, for example, would have studied it at that level, I think would equate it to a creative practice. Right? I think like the boundary or the edge of those fields is much more art than it is like a repeatable process.
Yeah, that's true.
So I feel like for certain types of writing, like comedy, right? Like writing great jokes, I don't think a lot of these models are very good, or like they just converge on the common denominator, or they're not, if they're not used as a collaborative thinker, they're just used as like, hey, give me this output. The requirement to grade the work is getting so much higher because of the ability to just conjure this stuff out of nowhere. But again, I'm like assessing this or responding to it from where it is, not where like maybe I think it should be for people to like become like much better writers and thinkers. It's like, if this exists and people are going to use it, what do you grade them on, or what do you encourage? Like, do you have them go monk mode and go and lock themselves in the concrete box and write a thing? I think you can try and suggest that, but largely it's not going to happen. So how do you reframe it as the prompt that produces the best output is the best writing?
Bilal, thoughts?
Yeah, I like Jack's case. I think where my head's going is taking a step back. Like, what is the purpose of education in the first place? What's the purpose of university? And I think we've been having that debate for a long time, that university hasn't been producing the things that we might have been promised in a way. And so if you go back to like, what is education, what's learning, it's really about the old cliches, learning how to learn, right? Or learning about logic, critical thinking, communication is another big one, obviously, in a lot of topics. I mean, obviously, if you're learning medicine and you're going to become a doctor and a surgeon, that's different. There's like a certain category of work that needs very like hard skills. But a lot of what us guys, I'm just trying to think, well, Jack actually did like a lot of creative stuff as well. That might be like technical drawing. I don't know what you covered in your work, Jack, but there might be actual like hard skills there versus like a lot of the stuff I learned, or maybe what Trung learned is, more theoretical, is writing essays, is learning about, like we said, the meta skills is really what you're developing. Like the overarching skills. So I still think those are the things you want to develop. And maybe now we're adding a meta skill, which is how do you use the tools of the day? And that is still something. That's why I think you can't just be like, don't use this stuff at all, because ultimately it's like saying don't use a calculator, 20 years ago or 30, 50 years ago, wherever. And so if that analogy Jack used earlier of like doing long division in your head or on a piece of paper, and then graduating to using a calculator, or back in the day, abacus or whatever. And then in the workforce, you go and you start learning how to use Excel. So there's like a progression of doing stuff with numbers. And now I think, like, if I think back to, did I gain much from like learning mental arithmetic? Yeah, I did, obviously. But in the real world, I use a calculator for most stuff. And so I think there's this idea of like, what are we actually trying to teach in school? And I think there's like a massive delay already, and now it's going like at rapid scale. But go ahead, Jack.
I was just gonna say, like, I hear everyone talking about this, like, I actually think the people that were like phoning it in on the writing stuff as it was, just like doing the bare minimum, I actually think they will learn more doing it this way than copying shit
That's
from
true.
Wikipedia and trying to string it together and like, I do think these things, again, not trying to say this is going to create the best creative, most like intellectually rigorous discoveries out of the gate, but my gut around it is like it raises the floor to a degree where like the interactions you have with it and the way in which you learn is superior to reading textbooks or having like one-to-many classroom experience.
Yeah.
Like if you're able to say, hey, like I want to understand how this thing works, and it gives you an explanation like, no, I don't quite get it. Like simplify it.
Yeah.
Use this analogy. People understanding how to get more out of the way they talk to that thing. And there was an Altman talk a couple of days ago. I watched a snippet of it this morning where he was talking about the way in which different generations are using ChatGPT. So he's like, anybody over 35 generally is like using this as a Google replacement.
Yeah, we were saying this before.
And then you've said the same thing.
No, sorry. Like, just before we recorded, we were just saying this.
Yeah, yeah. And what he said was like over 35 was like technology boomer at this point, basically like Google replacement, like type your query in. Under 35 to 25 is like deep context window, and like you use it as a more sophisticated version of Google and you understand it. And then below that, he used the term operating system. I don't know if you guys said that, but like people who are native to ChatGPT, Gen Z and below, it's like this thing knows everything about me, knows all my relationships. I talk to it about my personal stuff, my work stuff, my academic stuff. And it's like a completely different, even for us, I think, that read about this all the time and like are using it after having gone through all these different paradigms and platforms of technology, that being your native experience, it does almost feel like the handwriting versus typing debate, right? I bet there was a similar thing going on back then, where it's like, oh, you guys get to submit your essays by typing it in. I had to sit there and like my hand was aching after I did my, 10,000 word dissertation by hand. I do understand the response that it's like, it's not the same because you write one sentence to get 1,000 sentences back. But if everybody has access to that thing, then the barometer just has to switch to maybe the teacher doesn't even read it. It's like, that to me is what's so interesting, is like, what if the grading happens by machine too? Hey, here's the context of everything the teacher cares about and all the lectures they've given. And here's a model based on what they deem to be interesting or great. Run all of these PDFs through it and stack rank them. Like what? And I guess I'm also approaching this from like Trung framing up this thing in the first place, which is creative writing or English, not, describing something mechanical or scientific, but all of that stuff, I guess, is like long form writing generally isn't like yes, no answer territory, right?
No, Jack, I just want to say, I think you squared the circle for me, because the main thing I was wondering was, well, actually, I'll say one thing to Bilal's point. Bilal, you brought up so many things about critical thinking, communication, and frankly, most people just go to college to make friends, to be honest, and dick around in the early 20s, right?
Yeah, like and it's a credential that helps you get to your next step.
And it's signaling. So there's so much to tease out, which is why this obviously became so nuclear, because everybody's bringing their own perspective to it. The main thing I was worried about was literally the ability to think critically. So that's the main box, but Jack already just destroyed. You made it. You answered it, right? You're like, actually, you fully. I mean, I know we do. This is how I use AI, right? Like I'll feed it things I write and be like, "Yo, shit all over this," and I will think if I think your shitting is worthwhile, or if I don't think it's worthwhile. That's literally how I use it, right? I use it as an ideating partner, and that is that's it. That's why you answered my question for me but it goes to the other thing you said, Jack, which is, okay, if that is the behavior we want to incent, then the product can no longer be the 10-page double space paper where sometimes you make it an extra font higher and put the indents in so you hit the page count. You guys remember doing that trick? Put the indent a little bit in.
Ridiculous, right? It's like such a stupid thing.
Like, that was just as dumb. And the other thing I want to say was, like, to your point, Jack, about how every generation of technology, this has happened, Wikipedia, Google search, calculator. Dude, Socrates was complaining about writing 2,000 years ago. He said the act of writing would impede people's ability to have to memorize things and would impede their ability thus to critically think, right? Like this issue has been nonstop, but this is a step change, as we've noted with generative AI, right? If you're using the output as a 10-page paper, like Trung Phan ripping off Wikipedia still had to like think about how to not make it look fully plagiarized, right? There's at least still thinking involved. But I want to say something to Jack's solution, which I fully agree with. This is actually what I was going to bring up. So Jack already hammered me over the head and said, actually, Trung, there's other ways to critically think. It doesn't have to just be writing. Mr. Talk Your Own Book. Mr. Writes a Saturday newsletter. Get over yourself, right? That's what Jack was saying. Here's Eric Hole, I think he's a neurobiologist or, anyways, great Substack. This is his solution. He's echoing what Jack said. He says, why in 2025 are we grading outputs instead of workflows? He goes, we have the technology. Google Docs is free, and many other text editors track version histories as well. Specific programs could be provided to the university itself. Tell your student to track their workflows and have them do the assignment with that in mind. In fact, for projects where ethical AI is encouraged as a research assistant, editor, and smart wall to bounce ideas off, have that be directly integrated to get the entire conversation between the AI and the student, and the results, that will be the result. Exactly what Jack said, right? Give less weight to the final product and more to the amount of effort and originality the student put into arriving at it. There's a solution.
But even this, even like having the sorry to interrupt you, Trung, like the teacher or the like subjective grade at the end of that process is a pretty interesting bottleneck, quote unquote, too. You guys seen that? All these new school concepts coming out where it's like self-paced AI learning. I think there's
synthesis.
Yeah, synthesis. Alpha School is another one in Austin. This idea that maybe you have to, the university experience has to change dramatically in that perhaps these things now become public speaking exercises, let's say. Forget submitting a 100-page dissertation. You can go and submit your reasoning and your like, do it like like you said, workflows, discovery process, research, like package all that up in an interesting way. Then maybe take all of it away. And if you want to demonstrate your ability to regurgitate the material or you show your understanding of it, answer 20 questions about your essay. That maybe is coming back at you from an AI that's ingested what you submitted. That would be an interesting way to do it too. Like, okay, we're going to tailor a level of interrogation based on what was submitted back to the person. And then, you could basically make one-off multiple choice questions given back to the students that submitted their essays individually. Like, what did you say here? What is it? Yeah. What was your like line of logic between this point and that point? I feel like we're so like, it's very, very exciting to me, like the degree to which this technology can personalize the education experience, right? Just having a conversation to make an essay feels like there's probably, I wasn't fast enough to think of a good analogy, but it's like, driving a Ferrari to the end of the block and reversing it back, right? It's like these things are built to do so much more than the like really pedestrian, it's the skeuomorphism thing that we always do as human beings. Same thing happened massively in digital art, right? It's like, let's do an exact proxy of the stuff we see in the real world. Let's try and get this stuff in museums and auction houses. And it's like, guys, this is ridiculous. Like, it's so dumb. Like, you invented all this infrastructure to bypass this. Like, you can learn something without having to have, without having to physically drive your body to be in a place and have like these interactions with people. And to Bilal's point, maybe that should be more of an outwardly acknowledged component of the school experience. Like, be around your peers, get social skills, like try and like work with people, but just like keeping the entire process the same and then like throwing this grenade into it and then complaining is like, you don't get to do that, right? Like the innovation from the outside is it being pursued so aggressively, and then these like institutions that are for-profit businesses at the end of the day are like, you can't do this to us. It's like, no, you have to compete for the dollars that your students are paying you to teach them, right? Like, you don't have this like wholly like bestowed right to exist and never innovate ever. And I think that's part of like the technology crowd maybe takes that too far sometimes, but I think that is the sentiment, right? Is like this education system or the school system, especially after public school and stuff that's, you know, government funded, is like, yeah, you compete in the marketplace too. And if like one piece of software can destroy your value proposition, maybe it wasn't that great in the first place.
Well, you guys sent me a tweet from Vittorio, right? The BioAct Twitter account. He was showing that ChatGPT as a tutor was infinitely more effective than the traditional teaching, right? And I think this probably came from Jack. This is why Jack's immediately took the other side of my trade. He's just like, oh, Trump, woo, right here, bro, quit talking your book, man. But no, you got me. I
also think it's about the person. Like, you're a great writer because you care about writing. And if you like your unique combination of traits paired with that, you're already using it in that way. I think like we attribute our craft to like how or why we're good at something, when really it's like the set of ingredients that we don't really understand that like manifested in that craft. And I think
what I'm trying to say is like, still you need some function, but you kind of identify. So let me clear this out specifically then. What is your thought on writing as a thinking tool? Would you say for the vast majority of people that is the thinking tool pre-2020? Like, what else would force you to actually, you know what I mean? It's like, there's a reason why, you know, Bezos went obviously with the memo, the 6-page memo famously, right? He's like, the problem with PowerPoints is, just give me an example. Bezos is like, the problem with PowerPoints is that if you're a charismatic speaker, you can actually hammer home and sell something better than if you just force people to sit down, write a memo, and then read it. Like that, literally the act of writing and reading, I just don't think there is another forcing function at that level. Do you disagree with that?
No, but can I say, like, maybe a controversial thing? 99% of everything is complete shit. Like, you are talking about this from the perspective of someone who is like 0.01% or less, 0.001% earns a money from being a writer. The average person in the world is not.
No, like, but they still have to think, though, right?
Skills.
No, but they still have to think.
I get what you're saying.
I understand that. I'm saying.
How else do they think, though? What other situation will that person do? Take a 10th percentile person. In what situation are they thinking? That's what I'm trying to say. In where are they being forced to think is all I'm trying to say.
Writing the prompt now. I'm just saying it's a different.
Okay.
You're just directing it in a different spot is what I'm trying to say. Like, the degree to which you get leverage from this thing is all about how well you instruct it. And it's not about endurance, where maybe you were just like literally saying, hey, you have to get to the end of page 10. And that shows that you're a really good thinker. No, that almost shows the opposite, right? That you're like regurgitating some like very average piece of slop up to page 10.
No. I think this is a great
it's not I guess it's not a nice frame for it either, but it like cuts out so much of that like performative, let's, you know, make sure we do this thing and get the C grade thing through. My hope for this stuff is it just like identifies way before you're in college, like, what do you actually care about? What do you want to learn? What do you want to write about? What do you want to make? Like, is this something that like it goes from this like system that has very like neatly designed buckets that you have to force yourself into, to the total opposite, right? It's like, I would imagine school looks more like Y Combinator or something like that in the future of education, right? It's just like these like massively differentiated tracks of like educational ventures rather than like, hey, complete this task. Here are 3 topics to choose from. And they move so slow in comparison that I think we'll even, probably even by the time this time next year or the year after, when we're 500 episodes into NIA, even the startup model of a school will have changed, where like instead of this technology jamming its way back into that model, it's like, what is the 0 to 1 educational experience now this set of tools exists. And I want to be on record saying like framing all of this as a shortcut is not good, right? It's not like, but that is the fault of the school, not the student. If somebody can complete the task with like a 90% success rate by typing a sentence into a computer, it wasn't a great task. Like, and that like,
and it won't be a great task in the future, at least. That's
exactly. So that maybe point, is the most salient point by Bilal, is like, you're trying to get people to perform this task that, okay, outside of this school, it has 0 marketable value whatsoever. If you want to like, be disconnected from the machine and write poetry, and maybe there's a chance that you can be like make that into something you make a living on. But I don't know. My frustration definitely comes from the lack of solutions coming back at this, not just like, this is stupid, this sucks, like stop using it, because it's clearly just not going to happen, right? Like that kids are not going to stop using this stuff.
Let me read out some of the excerpts and we'll get you guys' response. So this is, and again, I think you guys, I have a suspicion how you guys will respond, and it is much more on the side of, well, the academic project is just fucking dumb now. It's just, that's reality, right? Because I'm about to read to you some of the most viral excerpts. Here's one. As a computer science major, said individual was depending on AI for his introductory programming classes. And he says, this student says, I just dumped the prompt into ChatGPT and hand in whatever it spat out. By his rough math, AI wrote 80% of every essay he turned in.
But was this kid gonna be like some like valedictorian of computer science basically with that attitude? No, he wasn't.
He might become an entrepreneur though, to be fair, because he's trying to cut some code.
Well, actually, Bilal, you nailed it, because he wrote at the end, I put my finishing touches. I just insert 20% of my humanity, my voice into it. You know who said this? That guy, the young kid that released, the kid that released Cluely, the app where you could cheat on anything. You remember that video?
Guy. Oh, yeah.
That guy. So he was actually the start. So let me read a couple more. I asked, so this is the author, James, writing the article. I asked Wendy if I could read the paper she turned in. And when I opened the document, I was surprised to see the topic. Critical pedagogy, the philosophy of education pioneered by Paulo Freire. The philosophy examined the influence of social and political forces on learning and classroom dynamics. Her opening line, Wendy wrote, to what extent is schooling hindering students' cognitive ability to think critically? Later, I asked Wendy if she recognized the irony in using AI to write not just her paper, but that exact phrase that she published. And she wrote, I use AI a lot, like every day. And I do believe it could take away the critical thinking part, but it just, I just rely on it. We can't really imagine living without it. Reactions, go ahead.
I think I want to respond to that, and I also want to add to what you guys said. My overall kind of punchline to all of this is how you grade stuff needs to change dramatically. It's not necessarily just about letting people use AI or not. It's, there's multiple ways, even from when we went to school, right? You do papers like we're discussing with the double spacing and all that stuff, word count, but you also had live exams, obviously, that you turn up and write for 2 hours and your hands hurting at the end. And then you also had presentations, you had group work. So I don't think all of those, I think those will give you multiple ways of assessing someone's meta skills that we're talking about, and actual, if they understood the subject matter at hand, right? So maybe there's going to be a lot more of that in actual grading terms, that was this person able to convey this idea in a group project or in a presentation versus just writing a paper. Also, to that point, Trung, I agree with your overall point, like writing is thinking. Like I think we've all used that in our own worlds, in our own work, sorry. But the point is that that's not the only way, right? So even in a work function, like you said, Bezos does like these memos, and Amazon's culture is about like writing a memo, people read it before, turn up and discuss. That's when it actually works. I've worked with companies that do that same thing. You turn up, no one's read the thing, and then you're all sitting there. And then some people just are slower readers. Some people don't actually comprehend the information. So there's other people that actually need to have someone explain it to them in a meeting or have a discussion to come to some sort of conclusion and action from that work. And I'm obviously talking from like a marketing point of view in that work function. Obviously in like a engineering context, it's very different to like a leadership function is very different. So that's why all of this is very like one size fits all. It completely depends on like what we're actually trying to prepare people for. But if we go back to what the education system was supposed to do in the first place, like I said before, the meta skills to me is still the most important. And I would add now using the tools is a part of the meta function, right? So it's, or the meta learning here is how do I use ChatGPT to do personalized learning? How do I prompt it better? How do I get to the analogy that's actually going to make it stick for me? So when I am in that presentation, I can explain it in 5 different ways to demonstrate that I actually understood the point and not just regurgitating something. So like all of these things, there's lots of good use cases for it. And there's obviously people finding ways to hack it. And right now we're in the hacking phase because it's so early. Younger people normally are better at using these tools than older people most of the time. So yeah, it's very, interesting to see that. I do still think the idea of like the meta learning is the most important. So whether I pulled a list here, funnily enough, in ChatGPT. So these are the meta skills it's talking about here: critical thinking, self-awareness, learning how to learn, resilience, systems thinking. So you could probably add another 5, but even those 5, a lot of those you can still test and teach for. Stuff like resilience, which is quite a generic word here, but that is in college. Like there's lots of things where you're going through, something doesn't work out, and you're gonna have to keep showing that you're consistent and working. So I still think you can design a system that accounts for that. And then the self-awareness part is maybe not necessarily something that you learn in university on its own, but as you go into the workforce, that's where some of those things actually come to be. And then the other part I'd say is outside of just the credential of university and the meta learning, a lot of it, like you said, is signaling, right? And just filtering out. Like by the time we all got to the workforce, they were filtering out for a lot of jobs. Did you go to university? Yes or no? Did you get X grade? Yes or no? Okay, now turn up at the office and 99% of what you're going to learn is actually on the job anyway. So I don't think that's going to change. I think we're going to continue to need to find new ways of credentialing people. And so that might end up, let's just fast forward 10, 20 years from now when our kids would be that age. I think that credential might still be there for like the high end of universities that people still care about, Harvard, Oxford, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But the actual proof of work, the way Jack would say, should be way more important by that point, because I think kids by then would have way more portfolios, projects, a GitHub of stuff that they've worked on, a Replit thing where they've been vibe coding equivalent in 20 years from now, and they were showing critical thinking and ability to create stuff or to create solutions to the problems they've identified or been tasked with to solve. So that's kind of how I think about it. And like all the old things we learn, like history and philosophy and maths, like those will still be there. But I think it will move more to that model Jack said, the personalized learning, where a lot of the academic stuff you're basically getting through a personalized tutor. And then maybe that's 2-3 hours a day. And then the rest is socialization, doing group work, discussing, playing, like if you're really young. So that's what I would hope it actually moves more towards, which I think it needed to move towards anyway before all of this happened. Now it's even more important.
You guys really, I gotta say, you guys actually crystallized my thought on this, because I actually intended to write about it for the upcoming weekend. And I was just I'm like, what, how, I can't believe I didn't see that as clearly. Not only is it correct, I believe what Jack's framing, where the interaction with the AI is not only how it should be graded. But the interaction with the AI, because it's so much more flexible than the output of a 10-page paper, the interaction with the AI can actually fit, like you guys are saying, everyone's different context, right? Like some people might just chat with it like they're homies. They'll send them like memes about like history, right? It's like, oh my God, look how funny this well, send it funny. You guys know the Hitler in the bunker meme? Like I sent the funny one to the boys this morning that we can't share publicly because it's one of the most insane videos I've ever seen in my life. It's about Kanye's new song, FYI. But the whole point being, there are some people that would literally interact with an AI, and that would actually help them learn about the topic.
Well, Trump, we did it on the pod a few weeks ago, right? When I was saying I've been doing this 1 hour chat with ChatGPT. I'm still doing a lot of that. And
there you go.
It's so helpful. And that like, if I was doing that for university, I would still then want to write and, filter my thoughts and actually organize my thoughts. But the actual interactive way of learning through that is way better for someone like me than just reading from a textbook or reading from a book. It's 10 times better. But yeah, so go on, keep going. What you're saying?
No, that's that. You guys crystallized my thought, because again, the key thing I was wondering, how do you force critical thinking? Because ultimately you still have to force it somehow. But I think actually chatting with AI is a way better thing than just writing. People do not like to write. That's
interactive writing, basically.
Yeah,
right?
People don't like to write because there's a blank page problem. There's so much self-talk about, oh my God, this is not good. And like, being afraid to publish is an anxiety. And then a lot of people are just like, why would I write if I'm never going to publish, right? But the point with the AI is there's zero pressure. People are so used to chatting, right?
Yeah.
They're so used to just like,
it's like texting, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually really, this conversation actually unlocks something in I'm completely changing my thought on this tool.
Well, I want to ask you to. Go on, Jack. Go on.
I was just gonna say the thing almost everybody is afraid to do is ask questions. Nobody wants to look dumb in a classroom. It's like, oh, I don't want to ask. Like, I'll try and figure it out by reading this like dusty old book, or I won't, right?
Yeah.
Or I'll just like try and approximate, like, think what they might want to hear, or like you're in an environment where the only thing you can actually do to get information is write. Like, it's a completely different, I think that, not to just beat a dead horse here, but like the actual act of thinking by designing a question that is going to present you with an output, you're trying to forecast, how am I going to retrieve this information? How am I going to string together a bunch of words to get the information that I want back, or the output that I want back? That is an unbelievably better skill in every context than let me try and transcribe this sequence of events that somebody asked me to from all these different sources. Yeah,
the memorization part, right? That's been outdated for a long time anyway.
Yeah, and there is definitely some some marketable value from just being able to take pain doing pointless shit. And I think that is a lot.
You could be a McKinsey consultant.
Exactly. Exactly. You could do most jobs, right? If it's just like, hey, I need you to do this arbitrary thing and come into this building every day for the next 10 years, please.
That's a good point. Okay. That's a big part of most work, to be honest. It's not high level thinking, strategic shit.
People who I had some friends that worked in finance, and they're like, oh, I made these like macros to automate my job and do this, isn't it? And I was like, bro, you're either going to get fired or you're going to just be like asked to do that for everything else. You have no ownership in the business, blah, blah, blah. And it's like people who are naturally inclined to find solutions for this stuff, like the pace of a traditional education environment is just going to be like watching paint dry.
I agree.
Like, as a product, it has to get better. Otherwise, it is, the end of the academic
project. Incredible subtitle.
Boys, can I ask just the last question I have for you two as parents?
Yes.
For your kids specifically, because we're talking theoretical. For your kids, the way we talk about screen times, not being on an iPad all the time, all those different things, social media, where does this sit with you guys? Like, how much time do you want your kids spending working with an AI for learning or in general? Like, are you worried about safeguards that you need to put in there if they're asking the wrong questions that could be dangerous for them, stuff like that? Like, I'm curious how you think about that, because it's related here.
Jack,
I like this alpha school model that is showing like objectively better results against traditional education metrics. Like, can you pass standardized tests in all these different categories by these ages? And that's 2 hours a day of self-directed learning within curriculum. So it has guardrails, right? It's not like, hey, go on ChatGPT and ask it whatever you want, right? In the same way you wouldn't let your kid on YouTube clicking around, doing whatever they want.
Ending up on an Andrew Tate video.
Clicking around.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, within like the same way you give your kids guardrails that, you know, hope to guide them in the direction you think is going to be good for them and the rest of the world. I think until you get to a point where you have enough critical thinking and infrastructure around yourself to like make good decisions, it does become about like, what are the core subjects to understand the world around you? Counting, writing, reading, like even memorization to some extent, like these physical skills that can be so much more engaging because they're customized. Like, what subject does your kid care about for this 2-month stretch, right? Like construction or race cars or any of these other things. Like, hey, how could you teach a kid algebra based on like the balance sheet of a racing company? Like, there's so many ways.
Much more interactive ways.
Oh, it's just incredible to think of the ways that you can spin up these ways to engage people that isn't lowest common denominator, that requires you to just be like supernaturally like have supernatural attention span.
Yeah.
I'm like insanely excited about it. Like it was even from the in the context of like trying to pick a school for your kid to go to, where you're like, oh, if they get in a, I remember like when I was at school, there was maybe like 2 or 3 teachers over the course of my 15 years of schooling that I was like, those teachers changed my life completely.
Oh, yeah.
Because they either like had a way of communicating, or it was the subject matter, or a combination of both. That was the only thing that was like, oh, maybe I can learn this thing because this person has the patience to teach me or the analogy to teach me. Versus this, where you just get to like iterate on that at a profound speed. Like, what are you good at? What are you not good at? Like, why would you spend 1,000 hours trying to master this thing, or like force yourself through this subject matter if it's something you're never going to encounter again and you're not very good at it? I'm excited about it. There's obviously like dystopian ways to interpret that too. But I think, honestly, the current landscape of screen time is way more dystopian than AI.
That's a great
like,
point.
Get your kid on Farmville for, 100 hours a week versus this, like a curriculum that can write itself based on like a set of parameters that you want to be able to perform this task based on a fundamental understanding of it, not memorization, in this amount of time. I think it's like mega exciting, boys. Honestly.
I agree. Great point. Trung, what about you, mate?
Yeah, I've been, I gotta say, I've been fully convinced on this, man. The
white pilled.
Yeah, white pilled. You pilled me, man. You deserve the stretching you did earlier. I got bodied on this one. No, I would say this to Bilal's question about, I have seen my kid interact with AI. It's crazy, man. He can't believe that there is something on the other side. He's done the voice stuff, and he'll just hammer it with questions, right? You know the joke about kids, they'll say why?
Exactly.
The elucidated joke.
And at some point, a parent's like, I have no idea, but this one actually answers.
He was just hammering the AI. But having said that, I still want to give him some distance. Same with screen time. I still want him to explore that non-world, but it's inevitable that's going to happen. And I'm actually not super concerned about it if the right guardrails are in place because of what we just said, Bilal. He's hammering these things. Why? And it can hang with him, right? It can hang with him. Whereas like me, after about 6 whys, I'm like, dude, bro, I don't know, man. Yeah. It's like, I don't, literally, like after 6 whys, I don't know. I don't know anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Man.
Like I'm out. Dad's tapped out. I have no idea. I don't know why the flag of Madagascar looks the way it does. I just don't know. Like, that's the type of question like I couldn't answer the other day, right? He's like, why is it this color? I'm like, I don't
And
know,
how many like randomly selected geography teachers on the planet would know that either?
Exactly.
Very few.
You're right.
And like, I don't want to be like shitting on the academic project in the macro sense. It's like there's clearly value to a lot of it. It's just instead of trying to, it must be an Andreessen or a Paul Graham thing. It's like you can't ban the future. Just it just happens elsewhere.
Yeah.
100%. Well, I remember even you saying about AlphaScore. I think Jack, you shared it with me, and then Synthesis has been doing that. I had someone from Synthesis on the pod like 4 or 5 years ago.
Nice.
And even since then, it's changed so much. It was like that back then. It was very much like just gamification of teaching stuff, and now it's like full on AI.
Fully AI tutor. I think for like 7 and 8. I think it's like 7th grade or 7-year-olds.
And specifically for certain subjects like maths. Like and programming, like those sorts of things, I think it's going to work really, really well for. But I think that I don't know, Jack, you went on that pod where I was sharing how I created like this curriculum in a project in ChatGPT, and then I was doing like an hour discussion with it, going back on each lecture. It was basically a university course, and man, I agree. I'm like very excited about it. It's just even for kids or like to even work on this at some point, because it's just. Yeah, it seems like there's so much upside in a positive way, like so much value to be unlocked, and there's only a few people really even like working on it at the moment, because it's like you said, there's a dystopian version of it. And just saying like to an average person on the street, oh, your kid could be interacting with an AI personalized tutor, most of them are gonna be like turned off from it. They're like, oh my god, that's scary. In the same way they were scared about using the internet in the first place. And we talk a lot on the pod. I've mentioned it 100 times about the adoption curve. And it just takes a long time for people to get to that comfort where they're like, oh, that's completely normal. All of us use YouTube now. So like seeing Harvard putting all their lectures on YouTube doesn't seem that crazy. Whereas 10 years ago, everyone's like, why would my kid be on YouTube when it's only like cat videos or whatever? But anyway, very good discussion, lads. I think that was very, very good. How are you doing for time? Because I know we went extra on that one.
We went that was meaty.
That was meaty, but that was a great discussion.
Well, let's slide through the OpenAI. Well, dude, it was particularly great because y'all convinced me, man.
It's a good. I want to read that write-up you got there, and also I'd love to hear from people how they're doing it, how they're thinking about with kids specifically, because it's something I'm thinking about quite a lot, just for the future. Like what do you want your kids to be learning essentially for the world that we're going into, not. The one we're even in right now is going to get even crazier. So, Trung, what's going on at OpenAI? You said they're restructuring. They got a new hire.
Let's turbo through this one just because get people on the top news, and we'll go to the GTA and we'll wrap up with GTA. So, OpenAI news super quickly was when Jack and I recorded last week, the news hadn't fully come out yet. OpenAI has given up trying to turn into a nonprofit. It's going to stick as a for-profit, but Altman's kind of structuring it so he still kind of has control, which is the ultimate point. Like Elon, who brought the lawsuit against OpenAI, he's the original funder, about 50 mil, and he wanted the mission of a nonprofit controlling the AGI. The TLDR of where we are now is OpenAI just hired the CEO of Instacart. So actually, Bilal, this is kind of like Fiji Simo is the CEO of Instacart, which she's been since 2021. Instacart, obviously, is the DTC grocery delivery app, but she built it into an advertising juggernaut. Because anything with these apps is you have a large consumer base, you can turn it into advertising juggernaut, right? And she previously ran, as we teased at the top, Facebook's main app. They call it Facebook Blue internally. That's with the news feed. She was majorly responsible for rolling out the advertising side. Now, the thing I want to bring out with her is she is now OpenAI's CEO of applications. So people are like, what is going on? There's 2 CEOs at OpenAI. Sam says he wants to work on product and research, right? And probably fundraising and be the face of the company. But she sounds like she's going to run the day-to-day. But from a lot of commentators looking at this is like, it's inevitable. ChatGPT is going to have ads. And Bilal was joking about this before, but to serve the consumer base that they have, when you have 500 million users, advertising. Like, blah, this is it, right? Advertising is the
I
business
hate it
model.
because I don't want ads in my chat.
No, but can you just give us your point of view? When you get to this size, why is it inevitable? Why is it inevitable that at the size that OpenAI is at, you have to do advertising?
Yeah, I just think, I mean, that's ads run the internet, right? So it's like at some point, if you're looking for more ways to grow and more revenue sources, it makes sense. And obviously the amount of data they now have with the memory they've added, the amount we're using it in different ways. I mean, the context window of what you're looking for, like the idea of Google search being the most high intent, like you're raising your hand and saying, I want to know about a certain topic. This is that on steroids, in my opinion, because you get the actual moment someone's asking a question, but you also have all the interest behavior stuff from before, like with the history of what they've been asking. So that the equivalent in ads, there's these types of targeting called like in market. So like you could say someone is in market to buy a new car, or someone's in market to buy a new home insurance. And like that, imagine the sort of stuff that you've been interacting with AI to get that level of granularity is going to be very, very high. I will say personally, I would love to have a tier where you can pay and you don't have ads, because like the experience of not having ads is just so much better to me. And I hope that we can kind of move beyond ads, honestly, because as much as I think there's a place for ads, and ads pay for the internet, make the internet free essentially, or free in air quotes. But if I'm paying $20 or even more for a product, I don't want to see ads in it as well. So that's my personal
opinion. Didn't Spotify Premium bring back ads recently, or is that
I don't know. They shouldn't have. Fake, maybe in certain, tweet. Maybe in like for example, I remember when the Joe Rogan pod was still exclusively on there. I think they had ads on that. But maybe there's certain podcasts that are like Spotify podcasts. But when you're listening to music, I don't think you should have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about the free tier on Spotify. But actually, Bilal, let me just circle around this with two final thoughts. Actually, because we went so long on the AI stuff, we can probably just hold on the GTA. Let's wrap this with this. Another thing that came out last week before we chat was Google is now in the remedies phase of its antitrust case. So the U.S. judges are trying to figure out what to do with Google's search monopoly, right? And we talked about the advertising one a couple of weeks ago, but this is the search one specifically. So they had on, this is like this, I don't know if you guys saw last Wednesday, but Google wiped 100 bill market cap in one day. Fell 7% last Wednesday. And it happened because Apple's senior vice president of services, Eddie Q, and services is like $100 billion business for Apple. He went on the stand, and it was a little bit cynical because a lot of people realized that for him, like Eddie Q's job was to make it look like Google didn't have a lot of competition, or no, had a lot of competition, so that it didn't look like a monopoly, so that Apple could keep getting this $20 billion a year payment that they're getting for Safari, right? That flows straight to the bottom line. Like it's like 99%, it's like 90% margin. So he goes on the stand last Wednesday and he says, for the first time in 22 years, Safari's search query traffic fell. So he basically said the first time we ever saw in a month, April 2025, search query volume declined. And he directly called out what Bilal hinted at. He said it's all going to AI. The drop is because we're seeing more in Perplexity, ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini. So that's a nuclear kind of statement, right? And then he goes on top of that and says, I don't even think you need an iPhone in 10 years. Like he was dropping some bombs, probably to protect both of their monopolies, if we're being honest. And he's just like, I think AI is inevitable. This trend's going to continue. Google got clapped so hard, it had to come out the next day with a blog post. And Google said they didn't actually directly dispute the Safari claim, but they said we saw search volume across all Apple apps and products increase. So that would include stuff like the actual Google like Lens searches, Google app searches outside of the Safari. And they said that they're seeing things click up, right? But the whole point I'm trying to make here is, to Bilal's point, it seems inevitable the transition to AI is going to be massive. It's just going to be massive, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say though, Google I think has done it based on the prisoner's dilemma that they're in, where they don't want to cannibalize their moneymaker. Like AI overview kind of slaps, man. What do you guys think about AI overview? So
it works really well. It works really well.
It does,
I never
right?
use it. I never use it. So
it just shows up in normal searches, though. Yeah,
it just shows up as your top search now.
That's what I think. They're going to shoehorn it into so many products that their numbers are going to just eventually go up to that level because people are going to automatically use it.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is like a fair comparison to OpenAI, like using however many 100 million people. Is it 500 million? I don't know how many active or what. But just like you're seeing what they're doing on, I don't know if you're seeing on the enterprise side, they're going to basically shoehorn it in there as well.
Docs.
It makes sense. But so I agree. I mean, I think the innovators dilemma they're having is like you're going to have the user behavior is already changing. I think maybe slower than people think in our circle because we're all using it so much. But like if you speak to regular people, they're like, oh, I'm using ChatGPT to ask it basically some Google search stuff. But a lot of them are still using search engines. I do think that will probably change quite dramatically over time. Because if we're like the early adopter set, or like I genuinely am using ChatGPT like 5 times more than Google probably. Like even just regular searches because I just by default go to it. It's no ads. It's in an app. Like I prefer using it overall. But there's still plenty of things you're going to use a search engine for. And then they also have Gemini. So like I think their big dilemma is it costs what is it like 5 or 10 times more to serve an AI result than a regular search result. The marginal cost
of a search, right? Yeah.
So and then obviously the ads part isn't fully there yet as well.
But I'll bring up. Let me bring up one last point on Google. I love your comment on this. This is in your zone. But Google came out and said, actually, yeah, you're right. ChatGPT is taking traffic from us, but they just straight up said though, it's the non-monetized stuff that they're taking. They're basically saying like, we're seeing all the traditional.
Sounds like cope to me, but I mean, it might be. Yeah, I mean, it's monetized. I mean, how do they know that? Like that. I mean.
Well, they're saying like they're still getting like the travel
they're still getting the travel searches
the credit
at the moment.
Yeah,
at the moment, but you know,
if
I was going to, no, I mean genuinely, I was in Paris right now, right? What was I going to search for when I was asking for recommendations? I was using ChatGPT, right? Like I was saying, what's the best day? Like I'm here with my girlfriend.
Itinerary.
Yeah, or like honestly, the amount of content. Like my parents were talking about going to Santorini. Yeah, so I'm like, oh, their age is this age. They want to go here. Like what? I went to this part, but where would you recommend they go? And it was actually really, really helpful because they said, actually, where you stay, there's so many stairs you need to go up and down. And at their age, that's going to be hard on their knees. So that they should try this area and they can travel in 15 minutes to this area. And I was like, man, this is just so much better than me reading on TripAdvisor or something for them, you know? So I think over time, and if I was looking for a credit card right now, if with the live results, if I said I'm looking for the one with the best cashback offer, like go and do research, you know, GPT-3 or whatever. What's the one? It's 3, right? That it takes longer?
O3,
sorry. Yeah. And I'm using that by default for pretty much everything right now. Like it's, I mean, maybe not just like a normal quick search, but for anything where I really want to get deeper. There's also this prompt that I added that really improved the results. I can pull up the prompt here in a second, but that's what I'm finding. Like just the more you are using it, the more you get better at like doing these prompts. Like the results are just skyrocketing in quality for me. Let me pull this up while was there anything else on that topic?
No, I love that, man. That was the last thing I was going to say. Why don't we do this? The last thing I was going to say about Microsoft. So the thing holding up OpenAI's transfers to for-profit right now is Microsoft. So Microsoft has them kind of over the barrel, as we well know, right? Like they invested at $13 billion basically in cloud credits back, I think 3 or 4 years ago. Owned the waterfall of profits that we joked about, this insane corporate structure they had. I think Microsoft had like 51% of all profits until $100 billion or something, right? Something crazy. And basically they have the ace card now over OpenAI. If OpenAI wants to go for profit, and OpenAI has already lifted the cap on the profit caps, but Microsoft still has to sign off on their transition. And Microsoft, it sounds like Microsoft is willing to exchange some equity component, like they'll reduce what they would own in this future business in exchange for ownership or the ability to license OpenAI's models like in perpetuity or for decades longer. So the big boy Satya Nadella, he he ain't just taking an L on this, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got, man. That was why don't you tap off and we'll sign off on that.
Jack, anything else, mate? I think we're good.
No, that was good.
That was a good discussion, lads. Yeah, why don't we just call it there, boys? That was a very good chat. Let's save GTA for next week, or I've added that, and how China captured Apple was another topic I'll have to go into.
Yeah, those are juicy.
That was a great chat, boys. Really enjoyed that. Good to be back.
That, guys.
Have the gang together. Also, another topic that just came. Do you see Airbnb just launched a bunch of stuff as well? Maybe we can talk about that next few weeks.
Yeah, let's do
all right,
that.
boys.
What would that? Yeah. I need to look that up.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to ask you what it was, but that's different.
I think it was like experiences and like you can get like private chefs, stuff like that, prepared meals, like basically expanding their offering on stuff like massages, personal training, photography,
massages.
Like
all right, let's end on
there
massages.
we go. Let's leave it on that one there. Exactly. Yeah. All right, boys, have a good one. See you guys next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Peace.